first ever heroes out of the gate. From Zappos, we have joining us Stevie Bautista, and he's got a couple different titles, so I'm gonna let him explain what those are because one is pretty bad. Stevie, tell us a little bit about your many titles across the board at Zappos.
Yeah, so I work with a couple different departments and organizations within the company, but Zappos for Good is kind of the one that I tend to spend a lot of my time on. I get called the director of charity, Karma Commando. The employees I work with have given me titles over the years, and I just those are the two that kind of stick out, and that people usually are able to understand quickly when I'm talking in public.
I love that, Karma Commando. You guys have the coolest titles there. I know we've talked to like the entrepreneur in residence before. I'm like, man, I need all of this on my business card. A Karma Commando would be pretty bad, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fun place to work. I can't complain.
I love it. And so that's a perfect segue actually into kind of, how did you get involved in Zappos and what really, I think, drew you to the mission? Because from the outsider's perspective, we're totally into here in Las Vegas, how Zappos has really transformed downtown and all of the amazing work you guys do. But tell me a little bit about your journey with the company.
So back in the day, I started in employee relations. So all of my departments that I work with and oversee all lie in HR. One of them being charity, which is Zappos for Good. That actually we moved to HR specifically to make sure that it was focused on people and not focused on product or marketing. But originally I started in employee relations, and I really saw that there was a need as I was doing employee relations work, and that was, working with employees, working with departments. I was doing charity work as a way to engage, those departments in small little ways. And then a position had opened up, and at that time we were working with one charity. We were kind of really small. That was about 9.5 years ago. And so then I kind of moved and transitioned into that position. And over the years, we've just kind of been growing it year after year with employee engagement and employee excitement. And so a lot of it is driven out of that. And so that's kind of where my journey started is, HR. And then I kind of just transitioned into Zappos for Good. And now I kind of work with employee engagement and charity itself.
That's amazing. So you've really had the opportunity to have 3 different touch points within the Zappos family. What do you see in terms of the culture that's been established there at Zappos and obviously a part of your hat, I love it. It says Zappos, good. It's all about that positivity and that branding, right?
Yeah. And so, a lot of when I first got into charity, like I said, we were focused on one charity. A lot of it was, what is it that employees want to do? So from a company perspective, it's not really me saying, hey, these are the charities we're going to work with. A lot of it was turning it upside down and saying, hey, employees, what is it the charities that you are actually passionate about? And then how can I and my team help support those? And so from an employee engagement perspective, which is another big area that I work with in the company, it's how do we go ahead and utilize charity in that fashion? So, the company may be excited about a bunch of stuff, but it's really at the end of the day, if I want employees to get involved and I want them to go out there and volunteer, it's going to be them making the decisions on which charities locally or nationally that they want to support and they want to see that company money go towards.
I love that. And I don't think we see enough companies do that because oftentimes when you join a company, you see them kind of tied to, wonderful causes like, whether it's American Cancer Society or something. And sometimes those charities don't necessarily touch all of the employees. So you guys have really given the power back into everybody's hands.
Yeah. And sometimes, we do have traditional ones that that have probably been working with for the last maybe 6 years or that have had a long run. And that we'll probably still continue to support from a local perspective, one being like Goody Two Shoes, who's local and does their, 500 shoe distributions every Friday. And so we work with them year after year, and they're just something that's very tied back to who we are as a company. We could help them in some extreme ways. But then there's also charities that, employees are passionate about one year, and then all of a sudden that shift happens, something happens in the world, and then they, people shift their mindset and kind of where they want to see that, or something happens in their lives, and all of a sudden cancer is big in their life. So they want to be passionate about that. So they want to have a bake sale. And so we'll do matching programs. We'll do fun things that we can engage our customers in, as well as the employees, to kind of help drive that.
I love that. And the one thing that we were kind of having a separate side conversation with some of your other coworkers about was the fact that you guys really have these initiatives started in-house. And then, like you mentioned, you tailor them to kind of what the current landscape is right now with us dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. I didn't realize, and I don't know if some of the people that will be watching this realize, that you guys started with something like your Love to Hate Running Club, and then you
Mhm.
transitioned that to help the current situation. Let's start there. Tell us a little bit about that initiative and how you've transitioned it to work for where we are now.
Yeah, so Love Hate Running. Back in the day, we just kind of were doing fun little 5Ks for our employees. Our director of HR, our HRMO, she's really passionate about running. She did all the Disney races, and she was like, "Well, how can we do something like that and tie it back to the brand?" So she wanted to create this internal race company, which at Zappos, if you have an idea, you could kind of make it happen. It's one of those places where Tony's very much adamant on, if you have an idea, you have to figure out how to make it possible and scale it up. And so she came up with the idea, well, she's running HR, but at the same time, she wanted to be a race director. And so she started a race company called Love Hate Running. And over the last maybe couple years, we've done some public races, we've done some employee races. But then when this came about, it was okay. Well, how do you retool? No one's doing in-person races right now. Everyone wants to do virtual races, and that's kind of the thing that everyone's at home. If they're going to go out, they're going to go work out. They're going to get some miles in, hang out with their family, get some air. The weather is really nice in Vegas for this, the next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of their goals was to retool that position and say, hey, well, if you run and you go ahead and let us know, we'll go ahead and donate money to, a charity. And so from that perspective, it doesn't cost the customer anything, or it doesn't cost the person who's viewing it anything. And it's just us finding a way to give back with some of the tools that we already have implemented. Hopefully we're able to get back to races soon, but that's not really what we're worried about. We're worried about how do you just engage people in doing something that's very much good for them. And how do we support that in a way that, also allows us to give back to another organization.
I love it. I've actually done, that was one of the first initiatives I saw, and it was coming up on my LinkedIn feed, on some of my social feeds. And I was like, this is such a great idea, because as a family, I'm constantly looking for stuff to have my kids and my family do. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. We can go outside, be safe, and get some steps in. So you're not just encouraging, the the health and well-being of people, but you're also like, look at what it gives back. You're giving back to Feeding America. I've got, I think, about 6 of my family members now that have done it, just based off the fact that there's that give back aspect to it.
Yeah, and it's something so simple. It's not, I think from our perspective is we try not to put too much thought into how do we make it the easiest possible for someone to get engaged and activated. It doesn't really require much on their end. And with the little that they do, we're able to do and, aggregate a really huge impact for something else. So that's really our focus with a lot of the things that we do. It's, something that we already have, and how do we just morph it into something that, could be useful to the customer at that time.
Yeah, 100%. You're taking away the excuses too. You're like, oh, I don't have a gym. You don't need a
Yeah.
gym. You can just kind of run around the block and you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah. And that was the whole goal behind it. It was just as easy as possible so that people really had a fun way to, especially with, parents now having to be teachers and, having to also hold down a job, if they're working from home. It was just a fun way to be able to break away from that and, give back and be able to have that conversation with their kids, or even just with their significant other about like, hey, we're doing this, or we're going to do this anyways. Why not just use it as a way to give back?
Oh, 100%. I love it. I think it's such a simple idea,
Yeah.
but it's something that is so universal. And I have people in New York doing it, and I love that you've expanded it beyond, because sometimes I think, when you think of Zappos, or at least here in Vegas, when we think of it, we think it's just we're kind of a little bit selfish. We're like, you guys belong to us, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But it's really for everybody out there.
Yeah, we definitely try to do our part in Vegas, and I think over the years we've been trying to expand that into other areas with some of the other programs that we have. Like our Give program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but how do we utilize every single person across the nation to give back using our Give program, where we pay for shipping, and you can actually donate used shoes or clothes to Souls for Souls, or books to Spread the Word Nevada, or school supplies to kids in need. And so we're starting to expand that program so that, we offer and that's another retooling, because, we do offer free shipping. And so it's another way of being able to use some of the things that we would normally use for a customer. How do we use that for someone who wants to give back? It doesn't cost them anything, because at the end of the day, they get to empty their closet and help someone else. We pay for shipping. So at the end of the day, it's free for them. But it's really a huge impact to the end user.
Yeah, 100%. And now, does that program at all change with kind of, what the concerns are right now with health? I know, for example, there's a couple of like Goodwill and things like that, that they're still accepting those donations of used goods, but others aren't. So does that go into that program at all right now?
No, so from like spread the word, every week they're getting about close to about 800 to 900 books still being delivered, which I'm not quite sure how they're getting that many, but they're literally getting boxes and boxes of books. And I think people may be using this time to, go through their closet like I did. And I haven't touched my closet in years. And all of a sudden you go through and you realize, okay, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. And then there's a way for them to be able to repurpose that instead of throwing it in the trash. It has a better use for somebody else. And then when it gets to spread the word Nevada, they're very careful because they sanitize all the stuff as it comes in. They quarantine it, sanitize it, and then they are now working with Three Square to put that back into some of the distributions that are happening around the valley. They're actually handing out those books to kids as they see them in the cars, and that's another way that they're being able to repurpose someone else's not necessarily trash, but turn into someone else's treasure. And that's usually that for me is really inspiring that we're able to cut out the landfills in that, but also help a kid read and stay engaged during this summertime, especially this long summertime that they're going to have now.
Yeah, yes, this is the school year that hasn't ended.
Yes, yeah, it's the school. Yeah, it literally is going to be like a 5-month break for them. And I think anything like that is something as simple as a book could be something that helps save, a kid from, just, playing video games. It could be something that's very educational, but at the same time, keep a parent's sanity so that they're, staying occupied and busy.
Well, especially too with the libraries closed right now, and,
Yeah.
and there's so many wonderful online resources, but there's nothing, in my opinion, better than just like that a book,
Physical book.
and to
Yeah.
and to really dive. That's like what we grew up on,
Yeah.
to be able to experience that. And I have a theory as to why you guys are getting so many books. I think people are reading all. I agree. I think they're doing the Marie Kondo thing, and they're getting rid of
Yeah.
stuff, and they're like, oh, what means something to me? But I think we're all reading it too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so then we're like, okay, that one's got to go. We're done. So I love it.
Yeah, they're getting shoes and clothes to Souls for Souls, and they're still getting school supplies because at some point schools are going to open back up, and it just means that parents who may have lost their job are not going to have, they're going to have even less income to be able to buy those supplies. So there's still a lot of stuff being donated across all three of those platforms, and we've invested even more money into the shipping cost to make sure that we're able to cover every single package that people want to send in to those three charities, and then we're adding a couple more charities coming up in the next couple months as well, as we see that this is probably going to be a new way of donating. And we want to get ahead of that curve to really help empty landfills, but also supply charities with the supplies that they need, given that, the direction of donations is probably going to change and what people receive. And this could be another way of being able to get them what they most desperately need to help those that they serve.
I love it. I love that you guys are staying so innovative and on top. You're really thinking ahead, okay, saying there's a lot of conversations as to what's the new normal going to look like, because it's pretty clear that we're not going to go back to a lot of the things that worked pre-COVID-19, and now we're looking ahead to the future. When you guys are looking at kind of that side of stuff, what do you have any concerns as a company, or is it just all about spreading that positivity and with an example like this saying, okay, you know what, let's find a way to take the programs that we have and make them work moving forward?
Yeah, and I think I know you're familiar with a little bit maybe customer service, anything, and that to me I think is probably one of the shining examples of we already provide customer service. People would call in. I think for the 20 years that we've been in existence, people would call in randomly sometimes, ask for a pizza or was this pizza place open, and it really was just like, okay, as they came in, we would just take them, and I don't think anything was ever turned down. If someone didn't have the answer, there was always a team that they could go to and say, hey, someone inquired about this. Can you guys try and help me find it? And then I think when COVID-19 came along, it was really about how do we expand that, and how do we make it so, when people are trying to find, a face mask or trying to find, just a basic piece, like we had someone the other day who actually called in and said, hey, I'm trying to find a webcam because I'm trying to, get back to work. And this is one of the requirements. However, who would have thought that like webcam sales would have been sold out? Who would have thought like all these things that like gym equipment would have been sold out? I would have never thought that far ahead. And so he's trying to get back on his feet, trying to get a job. And a webcam is going to be one of those things where they're having recruiters are having interviews over the web. And so that's kind of one of the things that he was requiring. And so we were trying to find him a reasonably priced one, but they were sold out everywhere. And so it was just being able to help connect a customer, and not even a customer that was calling for Zappos, just a person in the community who was calling in for a need, and how can we help fill that need? It doesn't have to be shoes or clothes or anything that we sell. I think the idea is we've always been about customer service, and how do we retool that to put even more emphasis on, and during this time, if they call in for anything that's not even related to what we carry, how do we help them and go the extra mile and show that customer service is what we're all about?
100%. And I think I saw something that you guys just posted talking about Mother's Day. We
Hmm.
have, Mother's Day coming up. It's something I think they had said, I'm trying to do something gluten-free for my mom, some
Hmm.
special surprise while in quarantine. And you guys were right on it to say, here's a couple different recipes. What is kind of the difference now in terms of the questions you guys are receiving? Is it just support? Is it just someone to talk to, or does it still kind of run the span?
Yeah, I think in some cases, I mean, in the past it was, a lot of questions around, does this shoe going to fit properly, or what type of runner am I if I wear out the inside of my or the outside of my shoe. And then a lot of it's just been converted over to basic needs. It could be, I'm looking for a place that's open, that I could, get groceries or this specific item. So it could be something specific to what the person needs that they went to a couple places and they've been sold out. There was a doctor in New York who was looking for temperature checks that you put on your finger, kind of like this device that you put on your finger. And he was having a hard time finding them. We were able to find, one of our associates was able to find some through some research. Took him a while, but I'd rather that doctor be focused on patients. And, that's something that we could help on the back end, do the research and find that product for him. And then we were able to go ahead and order what he needed and have it shipped to him. And so the idea is in this process, it really, I think it also helped us expand how we view customer service and making sure that no matter what someone calls for, we're there for them. And I think that was really a part of it is, really shifting the whole tone of our call center, which was already doing it to begin with, but
Right.
really, it was very sporadic. And I think now you're getting a majority of calls. There was a kid who wanted someone to read to him. And so someone pulled up a book online, I guess the book that he wanted, and it was a short book, but they read to him. And so the idea was just, we're basically here for anything. And I think when it comes down to it is you could call the customer, if they don't have the answer, they'll ask around, and they'll get the answer for you. Or they're very innovative. They have access to every single tool that's possible to search for something. And it just may be that they have an in that someone else doesn't have, or they have a way of being able to look at things or think of, oh, I saw it at this, at this store. And so they're able to connect the dots. And I think that's what's been very good to help show our customer service people that there is, there's an answer for everything. We just got to, put the work in and make sure that we're taking care of the person who's calling in.
I mean, forget Alexa, forget Siri, forget
Yeah.
Google, just call you guys. I'm telling you, this is amazing.
Yeah. And so the fact that they all are working from home, they feel relaxed. They feel like they're giving back. And it's just, to me, it's another way of being able to give back to the community during this time. Even if that person isn't calling in. Back in the day, it used to be that someone would, call in and, I think the longest call was like 10 hours and 20 something minutes.
What?
And if I'm not mistaken, nothing was actually ordered on that call. And that's been our whole motto. Tony's very much focused on, it doesn't matter if they're calling in and if they buy anything. Problem is the thing that you want to be there is there for them when they need us. And so even if they called, and I think they were talking about movies, the employee, had someone bring them lunch. But at the end of the day, what it was about is making sure that the customer at the end of the day got what they needed. And if it wasn't buying shoes or clothes, we were totally fine with that.
Wow, you just blew my mind. Like that's amazing, and it just speaks again to, the culture that you guys have created, and putting those customers first and putting people first. It really, it puts your team on the front lines. We're talking so much about, heroes, obviously, with this segment.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing you think of are the doctors, the nurses, some cases, the teachers, the parents, like all of those people. But you guys are really your people are on the front lines too. You're giving that need that a lot of people aren't meeting right now, which is human interaction.
Yeah, I think what I've come to realize is I'm working more and more on these campaigns, and not necessarily just campaigns, but they're kind of just the way that we do business and helping show that to the world. I'm really noticing that, when it comes to the hero, the whole term of hero, and especially the people who are out there working right now, there's so many different classifications. I think first come to mind is, first responders and your doctors and your nurses. But then when I start reading comments, it's like, how about this? You never thought about all these groups that help support those first responders that are also putting their lives on the line. And you have grocery store workers, you have, people, like our call center. I think they're just doing what they normally do, but doing it in a way that is very much being there constantly for the customer or anybody that calls in. So definitely, I think they're doing what they normally do, and we're just glad to be able to help in some way, for whatever that need may be for anybody that calls in.
I love it. And you just hit such a wonderful point where it's like heroes. You have so many different types of heroes, and you fall into that now with where everything's at by just being you, and that's amazing. You're also doing a very interesting thing, because right now in this landscape where we're hearing constantly about the unemployment rates, the layoffs, the furloughs, you're giving your employees an opportunity to step up and to kind of participate in these things and get extra hours or give back. What would you say to companies that are struggling right now and are looking for kind of those ways to be innovative and still keep their employees?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is retooling. I think you could look at what you offer already and find a way to go ahead and really understand, maybe do some research on what the customer or how that landscape has changed, and then how do you retool what you already have. So I think our customer service was one thing. Being able to go and retool that and kind of really emphasize maybe something that people didn't know we did already, and re-emphasize that to make sure that it was very apparent that that's really our intent and that's our kind of our direction that we want to go in. But even from charity side, like from a retooling perspective, we're going to start launching campaigns with charities to bring awareness to what they're doing. And these are the smaller charities that aren't getting the funding that they normally would have gone throughout the year. And they're going to be probably forgotten for the short term, or even for the long term, as people focus their money on their families, or those larger charities that are kind of doing the more outward facing stuff. And so we're going to be doing some social campaigns with them to do matching campaigns, but as a way to bring awareness, show videos of what they actually do. And so the hope is that, Zappos doesn't always necessarily need to be there for every single thing, but we can help amplify and raise up some of these charities so that they're not forgotten in the process, because at the end of the day, they will be needed. They just, they're being overlooked right now. And we want to make sure that that's not the case. So a lot of it is retooling that. So we're taking the money we would have spent on the galas that we normally would have gone to them, and we're actually finding a way to make it so that when they do have, when those videos do go out, they're getting even more awareness and probably, hopefully, even more money coming in than the money that we would have spent on their galas. So looking for ways to reinvest the money that we would have spent on something, I think, is another tool. And then being able to see how you could go ahead and apply that to the new landscape digitally, since that seems to be where, if you're building now, you're kind of ahead of the curve. I want to say we're behind, but I think we're kind of ahead still. I think we have a little bit of opportunity because we don't know what the world's going to look like. So you have the opportunity to do research now, build, and hopefully iterate at a time when, some people may be creating. So I think that's what a lot of it is really just looking at what you have and how you just adjust, even if it's one step by one step. But another thing that we've been really good at is also working with our employees. So we have a whole team of people that are really focused right now on looking at what the landscape may be for retail, on looking at what the landscape may be for customer service, and how do we go ahead and shift that. And so there's a think team, like a think kind of incubator team that's actually working right now, and they're the ones who do all the work. So you could have someone at the top that's making the decisions, but if they aren't doing the work day to day, I think those are the people that you need to bring to the table, because they'll really help you define what they're hearing from customers. Like even as people are calling in for customer service for anything, we're still taking that information and saying, okay, well, what is it that people are really asking for? Mm-hmm. And how can we go ahead and, is there a new tool or a new initiative that we can launch later on that still keeps this live or shifts the whole business to really meet those customer needs in the future?
Wow. You guys have a think tank that's working on that next step. What is this going to look like? You guys thinking of everything. I love it.
It's really all employees. I think when it comes down to it, I think our focus and what Tony has always been focused on, and at the company that I've been there for almost 9.5 years now, it's really been about, if we put employees first and let them help make the decisions, then I think that we always get better results when we do that, because they're the ones who know what's going on, and they're the ones who are going to have to deal with whatever decision is being made. And so if they're on board and they're engaged, I think that's when we get the best results, not only for us, but for the customer or for anybody that we're talking to or dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what's been our success or our bread and butter for so long.
I love it. So many people can take such wonderful cues and tips from what you guys are doing. And, as we kind of recognize heroes in the city and throughout the state with this series, and there's so many other people that are doing the same thing on different scales, what do you find to be a way the community has come together to display acts of heroism? What have you kind of seen and your team and the great feedback that you're getting from people calling in?
Yeah, some of the things that I've seen, especially locally, because I'm kind of feeling around trying to see what other people are doing, because I think I don't have all the answers, and so I'm trying to see. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Deliver with Dignity.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Please.
something like that I thought was very innovative. It was the idea behind there's restaurants that are closed or that have available capacity because they're only able to do takeout, and so they may have 40% capacity. So you could take donations in from corporations who want to give back but don't really know how, and they start to activate these restaurants, keeping people in work, but also with that available capacity, being able to feed the elderly or feed those that are most vulnerable, and then having people who want to volunteer and give back their time. Maybe they don't have money, or maybe they just want to give back, and so now they're able to deliver those meals to those elderly people. So it's starting to connect people, I think, in the community. And that was just a basic idea, but I think what it did is it helped twofold. It helped people, actually three, who wanted to give back, who wanted to, help the elderly and those people who couldn't go out, but also it helped keep people in jobs. And I think that was a really innovative way to repurpose a business. I've also seen businesses doing really cool things where they're doing like family packs, like ways to engage kids, like pizza, like make your own pizzas and stuff like that. And then they donate a portion of those proceeds back to a charity. And I think it's been really great to see that even when people are struggling, like businesses are struggling, they're still finding ways to give back. But they're also retooling their whole industry or their whole system to be able to still keep their employees safe and keep their employees working. And I think that's been very inspiring to me, even if it wasn't in the charity world, just to see how fast people were willing to go ahead and adjust their business to make that happen, especially even charities.
100%. And it seems like people really respond to that, like, they want to participate more when they know that there is a give back model of some sort. If you were to
Oh,
compare
yeah.
different businesses and one, doesn't necessarily have that and the other does, there's still that feel goodness of like, okay, the pizza I just got is giving back a pizza or something, it's something I think within their mindset when you don't even think about it, right?
Yeah, and especially as like I was saying, as these corporations or even these mom and pop shops or these individual places are losing money probably day in and day out, they're still finding ways to give back, and I think that's what's been most inspiring. Is they could easily just close the doors, they could easily do nothing or do what they've normally done, but they're actually finding ways to actually give back. Even some of the places that used to sell, I think, other types of cleaners, all of a sudden went to hand sanitizer to help those people who couldn't find hand sanitizer. And it was about just retooling, and they're not charging outrageous prices. They're charging like the market average. And so in that respect, it really was cool to see that, as things started to fall out of the supply chain, someone came in that wasn't their expertise, but they found a way to, get in there and actually do whatever they needed to, like the people who are making masks. I see this all the time, and there's these little groups of, women who are, great sewers, and they were like, okay, we'll figure it out. And then all of a sudden now they're making masks for hospitals, and that happened to be the gap in the supply chain that they were filling, and they were just doing it because they wanted to give back, and it was their way of being able to give back with the expertise that they had, and they just retooled some of the things that they were doing. And I think that's what everyone's trying to figure out, and I think that's the biggest piece of all of this is you kind of have to be nimble, and Tony's been very focused over the last couple of years of how do we be more agile as a company, and I think that's what's helped us weather this right now, is because we're so used to being agile, we're able to make decisions and pop up new initiatives right off the cuff. And because we're listening to employees, and we're waiting for Tony to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Tony's waiting for us to say, hey, what are you going to do? And I think that's been very inspiring as well.
I love it. I love it. What is the message that you hope that we all take away from this time, whether it's a business, whether it's a parent, whether, anybody, and what do you hope that our viewers take away knowing about Zappos?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things to take away from what's going on currently right now. I think you could look at it and say there's a lot of negatives, but I think there's also a lot of positives. I think there's a lot of, you really see, I guess you really see what happens in a community when things are tough or when times are down. We've had that, a couple of years ago when things were bad in October. And so I think there's a lot of times, in our history that things haven't gone exactly the way we want them to. And I think when you start to see community members come together, you start to see, 3 Square doing 20 different distribution sites. You see UNLV students and Touro University students going out there day in and day out, and they're just students, but they're actually doing testing, they're actually doing car lines, they're actually helping families. So when you start to see that across the board, and you see charities start to work together, which I think this is the biggest thing that I've seen, is when you start to see charities working together, which in my tradition, I haven't really seen much of that. I think a lot of it is, I'm working on this, and there may be 5 other versions of it, but I still got to focus on that. But what I've seen through all of this is charities working together, and I think that's what's been most inspiring. Is that when something's needed, it's not about ego. It's about how do we just do what we need to do and fill that gap in the community. So that's what's been most inspiring to me. And I think when it comes to Zappos, I think it's always been the same. We're here if anybody needs us, and we're not really much to say, hey, we're all about this or we're all about that. I think we're just, trying to do what we can to help out and do it in a way that's really authentic to us. And, what our customers have been used to, we're trying to then expand that to people who aren't our customers and, who may never be our customers, but we want them to know that we're here to provide support, in any single thing, whether it's reading a book or finding a product that you're having a hard time finding that has nothing to do with what Zappos is, other than we're here for customer service.
I love it. And finally, what does it mean? Obviously, with our series called Heroes for Nevada, there's so many interpretations of what that word means. What does the word hero mean to you, or what does it mean to you to be a hero?
I think for me, the way I think about hero, and I'm not sure this will probably be the right definition, but this is my definition. It's kind of doing something when no one else is looking. I think, to be honest with you, I don't think the nurses are going there and, they're expecting flyovers and they're expecting car lines of honking horns. I think they're just trying to do what they signed up to do and what they've studied and worked hard and are passionate about. Those people who weren't the grocery store workers, I think that they're just doing, their day to day. They're just trying to make sure that they're able to go home to their families. But they know that they're all doing great things. And I think that's the biggest thing is, the support that they're getting. I really think that there's a lot of different heroes that have never been, I think people think of like the Avengers and they think of X-Men and they think of, but I saw a meme the other day where it's a bunch of, superheroes, traditional superheroes are what people think they are, kind of bowing down to doctors and nurses and, delivery drivers. And, it's just people that, regardless of what's going on in the world, they're still moving forward. They're still, because they know that there's a bigger purpose out there. They know that there's, what they do is essential, and what they do is in the scheme of everything. It could be, delivery driver. You may say in the old world, it would have been, oh, well, they're just delivery driver. No, they could be delivering someone's medication, that if they didn't get their medication on time, that could be someone who gets sick and ill. And so there's many different things, that I think people don't realize when it comes to just everyone's job. And I think this is really bringing to light, just how important every single thing is, just like, I think there's a saying, the person at a Ford, assembly line, the person who puts on the seatbelt is actually super important because they're actually saving lives every single time they do it. And I think in this instance, you're starting to see, what people's jobs are and just how important they are when we used to take them for granted. And I think now we're going to start to realize that these are all really important jobs and they all serve a purpose.
100%. And it's made, I know, like when I go to the grocery store, I'm always like, thank you to the grocery clerks, because it's, and that might be a thank you that they've never received before. And being seen as a hero and having that tie to them is so awesome, so special. And you guys are actually honoring, we should mention before we go, that you guys are honoring heroes too and taking in nominations to turn around and kind of give back as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the list, we can never, we had an artist, the funny thing is we had an artist create a bunch of like hero images. And there was like 30 or 40 of them of different work class, like work groups, like delivery driver, this. And that only scratched the surface, because as we released the campaign, it was like, what, did you guys think about this? Yeah, there's just so many that you would never thought of. When I think when we started to do this campaign, we weren't thinking just, first responders or police officers. We knew that there was a lot out there. But we didn't realize, and I didn't realize how many people it takes to make one thing happen. And, like, for example, I go to a grocery store and I see one person checking out or I see one person stocking, but you don't realize that there's 10 people behind them. Just like a medical professional or a police officer, there's 10, 20 people that are making that one officer's job, capable of being able to be done, and we're only seeing that one thing. And so when we start to get the responses and then we start to hear the stories and we start to see how far they span out and some of the things that these people are doing in the nominations and when they're coming in, we were getting them from all over all over the United States. And it was just great to see. And we didn't realize that, the hero, kind of the definition of hero is really expanding, as we see it. And I think it's really going to shift people's mindsets when they go and, you see a movie and you see hero, hero, hero. I think there's really going to be a new definition for it as we start to move forward, in this new normal.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we are so honored that you have joined us to be recognized as our first ever Heroes for Nevada. We love what you're doing. Your team, you guys are so special. And thank you. Thank you for kicking this off. And obviously we could continue this series for however many years, and hopefully we do, so that we can highlight all those people that you kind of just touched the surface on. But from everybody here and across the country, thank you guys for what you're doing. You guys are heroes, not just for Nevada, but heroes for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We're just trying to do our part.